Hi, and this video is all about the renewed AP grind that has come with 7.2. Of course, some people may have been still grinding AP before the patch hit, but of course it is different now. So what I want to talk about is how will it feel the same, if at all, but also why do we even have the AP grind and could we actually do without it? Now, in terms of how it potentially feels different, before patch 7.2, when Legion first launched, first of all, we were gathering traits fairly quickly. You got them very quickly. You got a lot while you were leveling. When you finished leveling, you still got, because you were able to access content that gave you more and more AP. You were also getting the artifact knowledge, as we are again now. And there was a goal in mind. The goal was first of all to get all 34 traits, which completed all your traits that buffed your abilities. Then there was the 35th trait for getting that extra 5% damage or, output, whatever. Then it was a case of knocking off the next 19 one by one to get the maximum output for your weapon. And then you reached it. Some people reached it earlier than others, but everyone reached it at some point. A lot of people who were very much into raiding would have tried to reach that by the time Mythic Nighthold came out, or very soon after if that wasn't the case, and then you sort of settled into it. And then you'd finished it, and I don't know, I can't obviously speak for other guilds, but what I definitely noticed in my guild is you would come on of a weekend and there'd be a lot of people there. You'd come on, I'd log on Friday night, a lot of people online, on Saturday, all the rest of it. As soon as the vast majority had got that level 54 on our main spec, there was an instant drop off, and I mean instant. It went from having a dozen or more online at any one time at the weekend, sometimes more, doing Mythic Pluses, to like one or two. You might be the only one online, because it had burned people out. People were sick of it. It was something peripheral to raiding that they did not enjoy doing. And of course, it's widely publicised that we have got a lot of people who have left raiding for various reasons, but a lot of reasons that are sort of articulated. Of course, we don't have a survey. No one really does a survey as to why you've stopped raiding. Blizzard sometimes might do a survey when you stop playing altogether, but some of these people haven't stopped playing the game. They've just stopped raiding. So we can't say what the balance is. But an awful lot of people are talking about the fact that it's to do with the AP grind. They don't like all this stuff outside it. But will it feel a little bit different this time? I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking to myself, even when I was getting my last few traits, I typically, because I didn't farm Mythic Plus or anything. If you look me up and see how many Mythic Plus I've done, it's not very many at all. I didn't do a lot of that. I would do probably more than most maybe of the world quests that rewarded artifact power. And I would do a heroic dungeon most days. And I would probably do somewhere between 6 and 10 Mythic Plus dungeons a week. And most of that in the weekend. And just doing that, and obviously doing the raids as well, and doing that, even at the latter stages, I would get about 2 traits a week. So when I went from 52 to 54 within a week. It feels different now. It feels slower in many ways. We've got or is it? Because we've got the first few traits fairly quickly. The next few traits seem they're going to take much longer. Of course, we're going to get a new artifact knowledge point in another day or two, probably tomorrow, I think. Something like that, and then another 5 days later there'll be another one. But of course, with each trait that we get, the amount of artifact power going up increases as well. I think the crumb of comfort for this one is it depends on class and spec as well as to which way you need to go. But there are 15 new traits. You'll look at it as there are 15 new traits. Someone like me will look at it, I suppose a lot of people will look at it, because of those new traits, surely a couple of them are fairly worthless to you as well. Because a lot of those new traits are just getting an extra point on one of the existing traits, and if that existing trait you just did it for the sake of completion, then you're not that bothered about it. So when we get to that point, we've got all the useful ones, we're really going to chill on the next ones. And when it comes to the paragon points, the ones that just give you the extra proc chance and the versatility, whatever it is, the one that we can get 50 of, which you will never complete ever, again, people are not really going to chase that a lot. I suppose I can't speak for the very top raiders, but I'm talking about like semi-hardcore and casual players are not really going to be going chasing after that. So could it be a little bit more chill? It could. It could certainly feel like that. But the downside is that grind is still there. As we are at the moment, all of us surely are chasing some useful traits. I'm looking ahead at the next 2 traits I can get, the next 3 traits in fact, and they're all going to be tangibly powerful for me, like really good. And I want them, and I know that I could do a lot better if I had them. So although I'm not spamming Mythic Plus at the moment, I'm doing more. I feel that I'm doing more and will do more this week than I would have done when I was finishing off the last time. And it's in the interest of trying to get that. And it's silly things like this. I mean, I thought last night we did a late night, like midnight, night hold normal run. And I thought afterwards, I was sleep deprived as well. It was ridiculous. I was hardly keeping my eyes away open because I was knackered after the week's work. But the weird thing is, this morning I thought about it. I thought, why did we do that? Why did we do that? We should have done it after Sunday when we all got our next artifact knowledge. And even though it's not as big a jump up as it was from 25 to 26, to get to 26 to 27, it's still going to be more, surely. And it took us like an hour, less than an hour to do it. Why did we do that? And then like LFR, I should be doing my LFR. But I'm thinking, well, I'm going to leave that till later, until I've got that artifact knowledge, because I could do it at any time. And I might as well do it then. And because you're trying to think of ways to maximise the amount of AP you're getting, because there's such a large amount needed. But at the same time, you're also thinking, well, it's not going to be months. It was months before we completed it before. Because Legion came out, well, August 30th, technically, it was 1st of September, when I could get on. But and it was months before we completed it. This one, it's not going to be months before. It's not going to be ever before we've completed it. But it's going to be probably more like weeks, maybe like a couple of months, before we can properly chill with it. But it is the fact that it's coming back. So rather than repeat that, what I'm going to think about now is, why do we have it? We have this thing that people don't like. It's just another thing now for raiders. There are things that the more serious you are, the sort of more things you have to do. So like hardcore and even the more serious semi-hardcore raiders, for example, they've already had to do split runs, which means getting another out ready. A lot of those people don't like doing that. Some people like it. They like having other characters. Some people don't. It's a chore to be done, which takes up a considerable amount of time that's not directly related to your raiding. This is another one, and it's why it's putting people off. So why do we have it? The reason we have it, of course, we have to go back to Warlords of Draenor. In Warlords of Draenor, a lot of people describe it as having no content. And then you look at it and you think, well, there's definitely more content in Legion, but was there really less content in Warlords of Draenor than, for example, previous expansions, where the same thing was not levelled at them, certainly not as ferociously or by as many people? I suppose whenever anyone quits, they might, those people might always say, well, there's not enough content because, they're quitting. So obviously they're not happy with it. So what the issue was with Warlords of Draenor is the content that existed, you could argue, wasn't relevant. I mean, there wasn't new content as well. I mean, let's not beat around the bush there, but it wasn't relevant. And what Blizzard said when they were first initially announcing Legion, is they said they were going to make dungeons more relevant. That was a key thing. They were going to make dungeons more relevant. They were going to change this system up. So, we did away with the old challenge mode and we got this Mythic Plus, which is fantastic. And I think a lot of people really agree that this is a much better system, the old challenge mode. It's fantastic. You've got this sort of ladder system there, so you can keep doing harder and harder ones if you keep beating the timer. Who can complain about that? Absolutely brilliant. But it's like... And we know, let's not make any bones about this. If there were no rewards in it, we just wouldn't do it. Some people would do it just for the sake of pushing themselves. There are a small number of people that would do that. Most people wouldn't. Most people are driven to do content that gives them a reward. And there's a calculation going on in their head. It's a reward for the effort put in. If the reward is worth the effort they put in, then they will do it. It's much like life, isn't it, really? If you have to do a job or something like that, whether it's a job for employment or just a chore around the house or for whatever, you do that little reward, that calculation. Is the reward worth the effort I'm putting in? And if it is, you do it. And it's no different here. So there has to be a reward. And what Blizzard came up with, what their focus was, we need something, a currency, effectively, that we will always want. They tried in the past with Valor Points. We used to have Valor Points from doing dungeons, like if you did your daily heroic dungeon, and like in Mop and Cat and stuff like that. And when you were well geared, you'd be blasting through them. They were no challenge at all. They'd take like 15 minutes max. And So you just blast through them. So it wasn't content that was enjoyable as such, but it wasn't bad because it didn't take you that long and you just did it once a day. It was fine. And you got your Valor Points from it, and that's what you wanted. But Valor Points weren't always needed. You know, there was a limited amount of stuff you could get with those Valor Points, and especially for people who were playing the game more than just the basic casual level, there wasn't a lot to do with those Valor Points. I mean, I remember one thing, when at the point at which Blizzard said we're going to make them desirable again, you know, make them relevant in their terms, I was thinking to myself, still in terms of Valor Points, I thought, well, they're just going to make, because I didn't think of it in terms of changing the dungeon. This is before they announced what the changes were. I thought they're just going to make Valor Points more relevant, and they're going to maybe allow you to use Valor Points for other things, maybe consumables, or maybe they introduce some sort of consumable type thing that is useful for raids that you can get with these Valor Points, which sort of causes you to do that content, you know. I mean, what they could have done as soon as Vantus runes were announced, I sort of thought, well, that's a sort of similar thing that they could have done. At this point, they'd already announced the new Mythic Plus, so I knew that wasn't it. But that was the sort of thing. Maybe if Vantus runes weren't created by scribes, but they were bind on pickups, you could only get them for yourself, and you got them from doing a little quest in a vendor, and you had to turn over so many Valor Points. That would make you farm so many Valor Points a week and do that sort of content. But that's not what they had in mind. They had in mind this thing that will always be there to empower that weapon to make you stronger. So every week you're making your character stronger. That's the whole point of them. And it sort of worked in a way because it has got people to do that. And no one can argue that dungeons are not relevant because it is the best source of artifact power. I think even now in 7.2, because although you can argue the artifact power we're going to get from raids, that's very significant for the amount of time you have to put into that. Obviously not on a wipe night, but you know, when you're clearing a raid, that's a really good source of AP. But you're limited because you can only do each difficulty once a week. Then there's the stuff you're going to get in your weekly cache. Okay, and that will, if you really push the levels, will also be a very hefty amount of artifact power. But again, you get that once a week. So and world quests, well, once you've done all the world quests that give you artifact power, again, you have to wait for more to spawn, and that's going to be later. That happens twice a day, sort of thing, doesn't it? And so all of these things are time limited. The only thing that is not time limited as a way to get artifact power, I suppose, is PvP, but I don't do PvP. PvP can bugger off. Would be Mythic Plus dungeons. So people, you know, it's the sort of thing you can do over and over and over again. And again, that's what leads to the burnout, the fact that people feel they have to do that. So in terms of can we do without it is the last point I want to bring up, because I just had a mad idea. And I suppose the issue is I don't actually know the answer to this. It's a suggestion. Mythic Plus dungeons are not just useful for the artifact power. They are also useful in tandem with the Titanforge system. And of course, various people have very differing views on the Titanforge system. Both casual and more hardcore players have an opinion about that both ways. But nonetheless, Titanforging is a thing, which also means when you're doing like your Mythic Plus dungeons, when you're opening your like I've just done +7. I've done a few things. I've done +15 and everything in between. So I've done quite a few dungeons already. But I remember just doing a +7 earlier tonight, and normally you'd open the chest. The baseline thing is no good for me. It's too low item level. But it is a fact for me anyway. I don't know about other people. When I open the chest, even on lower Mythic Plus chests, I'm not going, oh, this is a new Chaos Crystal. I know most of the time it will be, but there's still that expectation. It's a bit like opening an Emissary cache to get your legend. I actually got a legendary today as well. I got a legendary from Warlords of Souls. That was from 15. But there is that expectation. You open the chest, even on a low level one, because it might Titan Forge, and maybe, you know, it'll be something really good for you. Because most dungeons, you know, if you imagine it Titan Forging all the way to 925, just for the sake of argument, most dungeons have something that you would go, yeah, I'd use that. And so there is still that expectation there. So my question is this. Given that Blizzard have already now sort of acknowledged that doing too many Mythic Pluses is not good, that they just want us to push higher and higher. That's the whole point of getting the artifact power in your weekly chest, in the order hall, that is based on the highest level dungeon that you've done. So it's getting you to push higher instead of just doing more of the lower ones. Given that that is the case, and that they're happy, or that they say they are, for us to do fewer dungeons now so we don't burn ourselves out. Why do we have artifact power from dungeons at all, other than the weekly cash, just based on what you've done? Why not just have loot? Because people will still push to do those higher ones, because they want the artifact power from the weekly cash, and also gear, because the gear is still good. Even when you're doing either a Mythic Raider that's killed more or all of the bosses, there's still some good stuff in Mythic Plus that is worth your while doing a few a week at least. Would it be a totally mad idea to just not have artifact power from the chests? Because one thing that a lot of people have sort of said, and one thing that you could argue Blizzard would have done a few years ago, was to put a weekly cap on the amount of artifact power you could get. That was typically the thing. I mean, that's what they did with Valor Points. They said you could have you could get a maximum of this amount each week, and there was also a maximum cap on what you could have, so you had to sort of spend it. And Blizzard were very keen that they didn't want to do that. There were various arguments which I've talked about in the past, not least of which for Mythic Plus Dungeons was they didn't want all the sort of serious players doing it early in the week, so there's no one to do it with the casual players towards the end of the week. But you could argue now very few people do boost groups. Some will do it for gold. Very few people now, we used to, will do the boosts just to get the key. Because we have enough keys within ourselves in our raid group to get ourselves the high level that we want to get to maximise our artifact power for the next week. We don't want to burn them all day, every day. And so why not, why not just take the artifact power out of it? The loot is a good enough reward to do a few, maybe even a few extra. And also the artifact power from the weekly cash. If Blizzard say that's going to be a major source of our artifact power every week, then that will still be there, and that will still be motivation for doing it. And it will mean that people can just get their +7 key each week, if they do a +15, just for the sake of argument. And then you do a dungeon, 3 chest it, get a 10, do another dungeon, 2 or 3 chests, that get another one, and so on. Just maybe you do 4 dungeons in total. Maybe you do an extra couple just to help out guildmates as well. And maybe that's it. And that's not going to burn anyone out, because that's not even an average of 1 a day, is it? And would that actually help? But anyway, those are my thoughts on it. I hope you found it interesting. Put your comments below, as always. Hope you liked it. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.